Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is one of the most recognizable faces in the world. From his legendary wrestling career to becoming one of Hollywood's highest-paid actors, his journey has been nothing short of extraordinary. He's built an empire around his charisma, talent, and relentless work ethic. To fans, he seems unstoppable, a man who can overcome any challenge life throws his way. But behind the muscles, the fame, and the smile lies a story that few truly know. At 53, the tragedy of Dwayne Johnson is not about the blockbuster movies, championship belts, or his global brand. It's about the struggles he has carried, often silently, throughout his life. From battles with depression and loss to the immense pressures of living up to an almost superhuman image, his journey reveals that even the strongest people can face heartbreaking pain. The world sees The Rock as larger than life, but the man behind the name has faced some of life's darkest moments. His story is one of resilience, but also one of vulnerability, a reminder that even the toughest heroes are still human. And as he enters his 50s, those struggles have become more visible than ever, painting a portrait of a man whose life has been both inspiring and deeply tragic. This is the untold story of Dwayne Johnson, the pain he endured, the battles he fought, and the heartbreak that has followed him through fame, fortune, and beyond. Long before he became The Rock, Dwayne Johnson was just a kid trying to survive a life that was anything but glamorous. Born in 1972, Johnson grew up in a family that was constantly on the move, living paycheck to paycheck. His father, Rocky Johnson, was a trailblazing professional wrestler, but fame in the wrestling world rarely meant financial security. The family often struggled to make ends meet, and young Dwayne witnessed firsthand the instability that came with chasing success in such an unpredictable business. By the time he was a teenager, the Johnson family had faced something most people can't imagine: eviction. At just 14 years old, Dwayne came home from school one day to find that the locks had been changed and his family was being forced out of their apartment. They had nowhere to go, and it was a moment that seared itself into his memory forever. For a boy who idolized his father and dreamed of stability, it was a heartbreaking reminder that nothing in life was guaranteed. That eviction was more than just a lost home. It was the beginning of a downward spiral. Johnson fell into trouble during his teenage years, getting involved with theft, fights, and run-ins with the law. On the outside, he seemed like another angry young man with a chip on his shoulder. On the inside, he was struggling with feelings of failure, shame, and despair. By the time he was 15, he admits he was already battling depression, an invisible weight he would carry for years to come. Sports became his lifeline. Johnson poured his energy into football, using his size and strength to escape the chaos around him. His talent eventually earned him a spot at the University of Miami, a powerhouse in college football. For a while, it seemed like his life was finally turning around. He was on track to play professionally, perhaps even in the NFL. But fate had other plans. Injury struck, and with it, his football dreams crumbled. The same young man who had pinned all his hopes on the sport suddenly found himself without a future. At just 23, Johnson's career was over before it had even begun. The despair that followed was overwhelming. He has spoken openly about those dark days, describing how he would lock himself in his small apartment, refusing to leave, sinking deeper into depression. For a man who would one day be celebrated for his strength, those moments revealed just how fragile he truly was. Out of that despair, however, came a turning point. With nothing left to lose, Johnson made a decision that would change his life forever. He followed in his father's footsteps and stepped into the unpredictable world of professional wrestling. It was a path filled with risk and uncertainty, but it was also a way forward, a chance to rebuild from the ashes of failure. But even as his wrestling career began to take shape, the pain of those early years never fully left him. The poverty, the eviction, the broken dreams, and the depression were scars he carried into adulthood. They became part of his identity, shaping the man he would become. And while fans around the world would one day cheer for The Rock behind the bright lights, stood a man still haunted by the tragedies of his youth. Johnson's life is not just about hardship, it's about survival. It shows us that before the fame, before the movies, before the millions, Dwayne Johnson was a young man battling demons most never saw. And though he would rise above them, the pain of those early years left a mark that fame and fortune could never completely erase. To the world, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is the very definition of strength, success, and resilience. His ripped physique, charismatic smile, and electrifying performances in both wrestling and Hollywood have made him a global icon. Yet, behind the carefully crafted persona lies a man who has weathered storms far darker than many realize. At 53, the tragedy of Dwayne Johnson's life isn't just about fame's price. It's about the hidden pain he's carried while still standing tall for millions who look up to him. From a young age, Johnson was exposed to hardship. His father, Rocky Johnson, was a wrestling legend, but fame in that era did not come with financial security. Dwayne grew up witnessing his family struggle to make ends meet, often moving from place to place, never truly finding stability. By the time he was a teenager, life had pushed him into situations that could have easily broken him. At just 15 years old, Johnson and his mother faced eviction, a moment he later described as rock bottom. With just $7 to his name, Johnson made a promise to himself he would rise above it. But even with that determination, pain seemed to follow. Football was supposed to be his ticket out, a dream career he poured his soul into. Yet injuries and bad luck derailed that dream, leaving him cut from the Canadian Football League with no real direction in life. He returned home devastated, humiliated, and without a plan. This was one of his lowest points, a time when depression nearly consumed him. Johnson later admitted that he even contemplated ending his life during this period, proof that even the strongest people can be haunted by invisible battles. Wrestling gave him another chance, but even there, success didn't come overnight. Audiences initially booed him, rejecting his too-clean image as Rocky Mavia. Instead of quitting, Johnson reinvented himself into The Rock, a trash-talking, eyebrow-raising powerhouse who captivated fans. This was the beginning of his rebirth, but the mental scars from earlier failures remained. As his career skyrocketed in Hollywood, Johnson became one of the most bankable stars on the planet. But fame also meant relentless pressure. Being constantly in the public eye, juggling impossible schedules, and meeting the expectations of both studios and fans. It was during this time that Johnson faced personal struggles in silence. His marriage to Dany Garcia ended in 2008, a painful despite their decision to remain business partners. It was a reminder that even someone who seems unshakable can lose balance in their personal life. Another tragedy came when Johnson's mother attempted to take her own life by stepping into oncoming traffic when he was just a teenager. Though she survived, the incident left a permanent scar on him. He has spoken openly about this, using his platform to encourage others struggling with depression to seek help. Even at 53, while Johnson's life looks perfect from the outside, blockbuster films, business ventures, a loving family, his story is shadowed by loss and pain. The deaths of close family members, including his father Rocky Johnson in 2020, left him devastated. His bond with his father had been complicated, filled with love, respect, but also deep conflicts. Losing him meant not only grief, but also confronting unresolved emotions from years of struggle and discipline. Dwayne Johnson's tragedy is not about a single event, but about the weight of many, dreams crushed, depression battled, relationships broken, and loved ones lost. Yet, what makes his story both heartbreaking and inspiring is that he never let the darkness define him. Instead, he carried it, learned from it, and used it to fuel his relentless drive. Fans see the muscles, the Hollywood glamour, and the electrifying energy. But the real Rock is a man who has endured immense pain and still chooses to stand tall. That is what makes his tragedy so human and his journey so unforgettable. At 53, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson stands at the peak of global fame. He is one of the highest-paid actors in Hollywood, a successful entrepreneur with ventures like Terramana Tequila, and a man admired by millions around the world. On social media, he inspires fans with motivational posts, workouts, and glimpses into his family life. Yet behind the carefully managed public image, Johnson continues to face silent battles that reveal the heartbreaking truth. Success does not erase pain. One of the greatest struggles he faces today is the unrelenting weight of expectations. For decades, Johnson has been known as the man who never stops, the one who pushes harder than anyone else in the room. But the reality is that maintaining that superhuman image takes a toll. Years of wrestling and grueling workouts have left him with multiple injuries. From torn ligaments to back surgeries, he has lived with chronic pain that he rarely shows. While he may look invincible on screen, off-camera he often deals with exhaustion and physical strain that would break most people, but the emotional weight is heavier than the physical. Johnson has spoken openly about his ongoing struggles with mental health, especially depression. While he has overcome many low points in his life, depression is not something that simply disappears. It lingers, resurfaces, and tests even the strongest spirits. In interviews, Johnson has admitted that there are days when he feels completely overwhelmed, days when the smile he shows the world is just a mask hiding deeper pain. The pressures of fame also extend into his personal life. Being one of the busiest men in entertainment means long stretches away from home. Johnson is deeply devoted to his family, especially his wife Lauren and their daughters. However, the constant travel, filming schedules, and business responsibilities often make it difficult for him to fully enjoy the simple family moments he craves. For a man who often shares his gratitude for being a father, the reality of missing out on certain milestones weighs heavily on him. Adding to this emotional burden is the grief he still carries from his father's death. In 2020, Rocky Johnson was not only a wrestling pioneer but also a complicated figure in Dwayne's life. Their relationship was built on love and respect, but also discipline and conflict. After his father's passing, Johnson confessed that he wished he had more time to reconcile certain emotions. Even now, the loss feels raw, a reminder that no amount of fame or success can fill the void left by a parent. Another silent battle is the toll that being a public figure takes on his sense of privacy. Every move he makes, every word he says, is dissected by the media and millions of fans. For someone who often preaches authenticity and kindness, living under such scrutiny can be suffocating. Johnson is admired for his positivity, but that very image leaves little room for vulnerability. He feels the need to always be the rock for the world, even when he is struggling inside. Perhaps the most heartbreaking part of Johnson's story is the contrast between how the world sees him and who he truly is. To fans, he is larger than life, a symbol of strength, confidence, and joy. But in reality, he is a man still navigating the scars of his past, the pain of loss, and the pressures of being a global icon. His tragedy lies not in failure, but in the burden of carrying so much while rarely being allowed to show weakness. Dwayne Johnson's journey at 53 reminds us that even those who seem to have everything, fame, fortune, and family, still fight battles unseen. His life is proof that strength is not the absence of pain, but the ability to keep moving forward despite it. And while his story inspires millions, it is also a reminder that heroes are human too. As Dwayne Johnson steps further into his 50s, the world continues to celebrate him as one of the most inspiring figures of our time. His life looks like a dream: Hollywood stardom, financial success, a beloved family, and the admiration of millions. Yet, beneath the surface, the true tragedy of his story lies in the cost of maintaining that image, the sacrifices he has made, and the fears he carries about the future. For Johnson, legacy has always been an important word. From his earliest days in wrestling, he wanted not just to follow in his father's footsteps, but to surpass them. He dreamed of creating a life where his name would live on long after he was gone. In many ways, he achieved that dream. The Rock has become a cultural icon. But what few realize is that the pursuit of legacy often forced him to live in survival mode, always pushing, always working, and rarely stopping to truly enjoy what he had built. Behind the dazzling success is a man who fears being forgotten or misunderstood. Johnson has spoken about how much pressure he feels to keep delivering, to always be the hardest worker in the room. That pressure, though inspiring to fans, can also be crushing. Deep down, he wrestles with the fear that if he slows down, the world will move on without him. It's a silent anxiety that follows many stars. But for Johnson, who built his brand on relentless energy, it's especially haunting. The tragedy also lies in the way pain has shaped his journey. Decades of pushing his body to its limits, through wrestling, action films, and workouts, have left him with injuries that will never fully heal. Privately, he has admitted that the aches and scars are constant reminders of the sacrifices he made for entertainment. While fans see a smiling, energetic man on screen, Johnson lives with the reality that his body carries the heavy price of his career. Even more heartbreaking is the way his battles with mental health have never truly gone away. Though he inspires others to speak openly about depression, he himself carries a quiet burden. For a man admired for his positivity, allowing himself to show vulnerability is difficult. He has admitted that he doesn't always have the answers, and there are nights when the weight of everything, fame, expectations, family, and loss, feels unbearable. His story proves that no level of success shields someone from the darkness within. The most tender part of Johnson's life today is his role as a father. He loves his daughters deeply and has often said that being a dad is his greatest achievement. Yet the heartbreaking reality is that the demands of his career often pull him away from them. He has missed birthdays, family events, and simple everyday moments that he cannot get back. For all his financial success, Johnson knows that time is the one thing he can never buy more of, and that truth weighs heavily on him. As fans celebrate his larger-than-life persona, they often miss the fragile human behind it all. The man who once had nothing, who battled eviction, depression, and self-doubt, still lives inside him. That man fears returning to the emptiness he once knew, even though the world now sees him as untouchable. It is this tension, the clash between the world's view of him and his inner struggles, that makes his story beyond heartbreaking. At 53, Dwayne Johnson's tragedy is not in defeat, but in the silent sacrifices no one sees. He is living proof that fame, wealth, and admiration do not erase pain. In fact, they often magnify it. His legacy will certainly inspire generations to come. But the heartbreaking truth is that the price of that legacy has been paid with pieces of himself, his body, his peace and precious time with those he loves most.